Welcome to session 10, part 2, Dominion, Idolatry, and the Marketing of the Plantation System.
Hi, Haley. How's it going?
It's good.
Do you see we're wearing Christmas colors here? You're in red, I'm in green.
You're right. We are, because it's almost Christmas.
It is. We're recording this. Yeah,
Merry Christmas. We can finally say Merry Christmas
we
again.
can finally say it.
Finally, without the government stopping us.
So there's this video called "This Family Owns America" by Luxury Zone, and it profiles the 10 wealthiest families in the world. I think we ought to talk about this. A family like number 8 or something like that is the Betancourt family. Here's a little clip of them.
Number 8. The Betancourt family. When discussing rich families, we often look at a patriarch on top of the pyramid. Well, not with the Betancourts. Here, the late great Liliane Betancourt was the matriarch that elevated the family to its ultra-rich status. Not that the family was poor before Liliane's arrival. Actually, the Betancourt is an old noble family that can trace their heritage back to the 14th century Norman nobles. Still, under Liliane's leadership, her family branch managed to gain fame, fortune, and the status of one of the most affluent families in the world. The matriarch herself was the wealthiest woman in the world, worth $44.3 billion at the time of her death in 2017. Today, the family is worth more than $92.7 billion. The primary income source, of course, is the iconic L'Oreal Cosmetics empire. Today, this titan of women's beauty is in the hands of Liliane's daughter, Francoise Betancourt Myers, who followed in her footsteps and not only became the wealthiest woman in the world, but is also among the top 10 richest people today. Francoise takes the 9th spot with an approximate net worth of $92 billion. Despite their massive fortune, the Betancourt family is remarkably down to earth. Yes, they live in lavish homes, drive exceptional cars, and enjoy the finer things in life. But they prefer to stay away from the spotlight and enjoy the serenity only $92.7 billion can buy you. Still, compared to our next entry, the Betancourt are quite the spenders, despite being slightly less fortunate.
So I guess,
for the serenity that over $90 billion would buy.
right.
I actually don't think that's what the Bible says about $92 billion.
I know, but they're so down to earth. I mean, look at the way they dress.
I know.
So what surprises me about this is that they are not like an oil family, a banking family, because like the Saud family is like one of the wealthiest. They're in this list.
Right.
But this is the L'Oreal family. Are you surprised that fashion, perfume, this kind of industry has made this family so much money?
No, I love cosmetics.
You do.
I do. I'm not surprised. I think it's.
You're not surprised.
I'm not surprised. No.
I mean, and then there's the Wertheimer family. They came in at like number 6, and they're the family that I guess developed Coco Chanel. And I'm like, wow, 2 of the top 10 wealthiest families in the world are like fashion related. I guess I'm naive.
Everyone has to wear clothes and puts various things on their body. Everybody does that.
That is true. That is true. I guess this kind of fits in with what we were talking about last time. So there were 2 parts of the theological framing, I think, that we wanted to explore. One is the rule and subdue part of this, and the other is idolatry. So the rule and subdue part, it comes from Genesis 1, and it's the idea that in the Protestant world, this has meant that all of the planet is like subject to our whim. Basically, like we get to exploit planet, convert nature into money. And so how we do that, there's very little constraint about that. And it goes even so far as to make other people the object that we are supposed to rule and subdue. Right. And obviously slavery is the worst example of that. But like exploiting people's labor, or even exploiting ourselves in order to make money off it or make money off ourselves. Like that becomes part of the raw material that we're ruling and subduing. And the other half of it is the idolatry. So idol worship in the old world, back then, I would say, Haley, I want good weather for my crops. And so why don't you and your family come over? We'll bow down to this idol representing the god of rain. And maybe we'll have some rain that will make my crops better. So, it's about control.
Mhm.
We don't really do that today in an overt way. We do it in more of a subtle way where we still want to control the world, because the world is a scary place. But the way we do that is by inhabiting the idol, like we participate in the idolatry itself. We inhabit the idolatry or the idol, and then we kind of market an image of ourselves back to the rest of the world so that we can become part of the plantation system. And I think this was connected to the marketing and propaganda of ourselves, right? Like
Mm.
using what we wear, what we smell like, what kind of appearance we can give off, what impression are we making? It's fascinating.
Right, right. Well, we know that when we do see sculptures, they're generally of an ideal of someone who's pretty attractive. We don't see, someone who has a disability that's obvious. We have statues of Adonis. We have beautiful things.
Right, right. Even back then, we were projecting an image of ourselves, putting it in stone.
Hmm.
So one of the main ways I think we do that today is by idolizing youth.
Mm.
I mean, youth represents things about ruling and subduing. Like you have energy if you're young, you have vitality, fertility, right? So
Mhm.
sexual attractiveness in women, which of course it's unfair. You look at, how many actresses are able to kind of span their whole career across their age. Like maybe Meryl Streep and Helen Mirren were able to do this, but that's rare. That's the exception. I think
Right.
men somehow are more able to continue on in the field of acting
Hmm. Hmm.
even as they age.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of speak for yourself. Like sexual attractiveness in women can be a little bit synonymous with youth, but no one says that an actor who's in his 20s is in his prime. Most of them are more in their prime when they get older, when they're in their 30s and their 40s. And so it's not the innocence and even the energy and the vitality necessarily that are correlated with youth in men. So it's not really the culture of youth for men. It's more about authority and having mastery over yourself. There's a lot of that in men, and that is what is actually considered more sexually attractive to women rather than some youthful idiot kid.
Oh, so when Meryl Streep plays the boss in The Devil Wears Prada,
Mm.
like she is an authoritative, commanding woman, but somehow
Hmm.
that is intimidating.
Yes, and it's certainly it's she's beautiful, obviously, but she's not sexual. It's not appealing in a sexual way as I don't know, Patrick Dempsey, who I think when he was in Grey's Anatomy, when he started, I think he was older. I think he looked like he was in his 40s to me.
Oh, interesting. But it's interesting that men are having struggles with their appearance more and more. So there's like body dysmorphia at higher rates in
Hmm.
young men, and we are young men. I wouldn't say I'm a young man, but men are being marketed to,
Mm,
right,
hmm.
with clothing that makes you look younger and fitter and more muscular,
Hmm.
right? There's like
Hmm.
pants with butt lift, like that.
Hmm.
I never heard of that. Or
Right.
shirts that make your chest and biceps look bigger.
Right, right. Well, the marketing to men is also still associated with authority and ruling because we can sort of look at like there's a lot about the trainer or trainers who train the guys who end up in the Marvel movies and how much weight they have to put on. They have to get really strong, and all they're eating is like chicken breast and sweet potatoes and broccoli for like a whole long time, and they don't even think about sugar or coffee or anything. And then they look really, really good, and they're extremely miserable. And that is the ideal. So it's, strength and domination. And that's what's attractive for men. And it's not necessarily, being slight and youthful.
True. I want to come back to the youthful part because I feel like there's something about youth,
Mm,
but I totally I'm glad that you're pushing back on me about the authority, the ruling and subduing part, because I think that connects with why it is that taller people make more money, right?
mhm.
Like for doing the same job, I think tall people get paid $10,000 to $15,000 more than a
Yeah,
shorter person. And were
right.
you telling me something about how people always think you're taller than you actually are?
Yeah, I'll say like I'm 4'11", and people are like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm standing right next to you without heels on. I can't hide my height." And people are like, "You look taller to me." I'm like, "Okay, I'm not."
I mean, I think that has to do with your psychological size.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
Right.
but I'm not. I may be psychologically big, but I guess it won't count in $10,000 to $15,000 more of income, I suppose.
May it be so one day, may it be so, but
Maybe.
no. But about youth, I mean, and innocence, right? I
Hmm.
hear what you're saying. Uh, it's hard to necessarily connect youth with authority, but sometimes
Hmm.
there's a moral authority that we attribute to innocence.
Mm.
And who are the most innocent? It's the youngest people, or the youngest looking people even.
Yeah.
So there's this book that we were talking about, The Survival of the Prettiest. And one of the things it does is it tries to quantify, like what is the average, um, the distance between your eyes, nose size,
Hmm.
like facial structure, and especially what of those qualities make a baby look young versus,
Mm.
there are babies that are born, they look older than they are. They look more mature.
Hmm. Right.
And babies that look young actually get more FaceTime with their parents. They get more
Mm.
like googly eyes made at them. They get more smiles. I was really sad like to read that. Like, oh,
Hmm.
but I guess
Yeah.
there's kind of a human nature instinct in us. Like we want to protect those who are innocent and young.
Right. Yeah. Well, in Survival of the Prettiest, it does talk about, and this is outside of that book, even colorism. In the West,
Mm.
amongst like white people, tanning is a big deal. You can go to a tanning booth, you can get a spray tan. And I never really understand that because I don't need that. But also, I don't want that. And that's a big thing in Asia and in other parts of the world where people are not white. Skin whitening is a thing. Like if you watch the Indian matchmaking show on Netflix, you can see that a lot of the times people are like, I want someone who's fair. They can't be dark skinned. They have to be fair. And so there's this beauty product called Fair and Lovely, I think, and it's skin bleaching. Like there are skin products that will intentionally bleach your skin out, and it can be very, very damaging. I think the Miss Columbia finalist at one point talked about how she had tried skin bleaching and it was very damaging to her skin. um it's a big deal in Korean beauty, which it has had quite the heyday, having glass skin and
Mhm.
the fair skin, looking young. There's like lowering the arches of your eyebrows and making them more straight because that looks more youthful, having big eyes, having a
Oh,
small
yeah.
nose, fair skin, big eyes, small nose, flat brows, glossy. These are all things that are prized.
Wow. So it's a combination of, well, this is the result of imperialism and colonialism because white people have taken over the world, so they're more powerful.
Yeah,
And but
yeah,
also let's insert some like innocence into that. So let's make baby features, baby-like features.
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
gosh.
yeah, yeah.
But we do see that in any place where there's kind of a range of skin tones, right?
Hmm.
Like in Latin telenovelas or
Hmm.
like Bollywood movies, like the lighter skinned people tend to be in the more prominent authority roles, hero
Yes.
roles. Like darker skinned folks
Hmm.
are in the serving roles and
Hmm.
that.
And I do remember reading how in the Black Panther movies, they needed lighting designers who were able to light black skin, because it's not just the skin that you're in, it's also how light interacts with you and how that affects film and what that looks like on a screen. And so just using any old lights for white people does not work if you have darker skin. You have to be lit differently. So it's not just, people are trying to bleach their skin. It's like you're trying to look good, and there's a whole world that's built behind what people look like on a screen in front of you.
And that's a specific skill and expertise, and it's good to do that because
Hmm.
this is what our eyes perceive in day-to-day life.
Right.
Uh, but it's so easy to miss or to
Hmm.
not understand how to do that well,
Right. Right.
because we have a light skin normativity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's this interesting story in the Bible. I mean, this may or may not directly reflect on this dynamic, but when Moses got married, he married a Midianite woman named Zipporah. And so the Midianite people and the Israelite people, they were kind of like very distant cousins. But apparently Moses's sister Miriam, she complained that Zipporah was a Midianite, and as a result, God turned Miriam into a leper temporarily. And
Mm.
the irony of that is that, okay, well, Miriam, if you want to be white, you will be white, right? Because lepers
Mm.
have
Hmm.
white skin. And later she repented and God healed her. But that is a really interesting story.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if we come back to clothing and appearances, and a little bit out of the skin tone stuff, um, it has, and to tie it into our plantation topic, there's a video on clothing that I found really interesting, talking about how most of the money that is made by these big fashion companies is not made off of extremely wealthy people buying luxury goods for wealthy people. It's mainly made off of poor and middle class people who are aiming to signal that they are something other than poor and middle class.
Some people purchase the kinds of goods that create the impression that they have money to spare, even when they don't. Researchers examined Google search trends across the US and found that people in states with relatively high income inequality were more likely to search for luxury brands than those in other states. You can actually map this correlation, and you can see searches for luxurious brands like Ralph Lauren or items like fur vests had the same breakdown as did the map of income inequality. Despite what we think, that common luxury items are only purchased by the rich, it's actually the lower and middle class consumers that account for nearly half of the luxury goods market globally. The more extreme income inequality becomes, the more pressure people feel to create the impression that they are succeeding. When the COVID pandemic shut down nearly everything, it caused many middle-class folks to lose their jobs and place significant financial strain on the entire world. You'd think luxury spending would crash during a time of global financial uncertainty, yet the exact opposite happened. Moet Hennessy Louis Vuitton, LVMH for short, is the French conglomerate that owns many brands such as Tiffany and Dior. Oddly enough, the last few years has been an incredible growth period for LVMH. Its market cap at one point crossed over $500 billion, and Bernard Arnault, CEO of LVMH, became the richest person alive with a net worth over $200 billion.
Wow, that's sneaky. So in that
Mhm.
way, fashion is like banking. A lot of their money is made not off the wealthy, but off the poor.
Right. Right.
It's by persuading you that you need to
Hmm.
look this way.
Hmm. These luxury brands will have separate brands entirely that are debranded, that are better quality, made in a better way with better materials, and don't have a brand splash all over them. And that's a quiet luxury that goes to the truly wealthy.
This emphasis on simplicity and seriousness puts even more distance between the quiet luxury trend and other styles of rich dressing, epitomizing the concept that money talks but wealth whispers. Take, for instance, the characters in Succession. Even though their clothing is rather plain, these blazers and pullovers actually cost thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it was, I watched all of Succession earlier this year. It's a really interesting show. And there was a lot of, I was just fascinated by the wardrobe because they weren't, wearing what looked like super wealthy people clothes. They were wearing sort of regular looking clothes, but also flying in private planes and helicopters and riding on yachts for their vacations. But their clothes were really, really expensive. And so there was a lot written about that and a lot of interesting stuff about covert elitist clothing.
But then there's like the mirror image of that, where Mark Zuckerberg's t-shirts cost $400. Like there are people, ordinary people, who are wanting to look like Mark Zuckerberg. I hate how he looks. Why would he spend $400 per shirt to look like that?
On a plain t-shirt,
On
no
a plain
less.
t-shirt. I mean, the
Yeah.
Kirkland brand t-shirts in Costco look just like that.
Yeah, unless you were super wealthy, and then you would know the difference. It's, as this video says, it's sort of a way to avoid the guillotine because you're not wearing crowns and furs. You're wearing a insanely expensive, very plain t-shirt,
So the poor mob doesn't know who to come for.
I guess.
As we talk about Jesus's Jubilee economy, obviously we want to question the dominant Protestant understanding of rule and subdue, like that was given collectively to human beings. And then Scripture definitely challenges the idolatry, the desire for control. One of the most striking passages is the really hard to interpret and controversial passage in 1 Corinthians 11, 2 through 16, where the Apostle Paul talks about head coverings, and it's about appearances and clothing and dress and also law. So back then, it would have been a tricky issue for a woman who used to be a prostitute who comes to Christ and has preaching and teaching gifts, because by Roman law, she would have had to dress kind of like a man, like wear a male toga, and not be she was not permitted to wear the honorable, the shawl that honorable, quote unquote, women wore. The question that would have been raised is, okay, this woman is like a new creation in Christ. So if she's going to preach in our congregation, that's a public setting most of the time. And so, what should we do? Should we break Roman law? Also, she shouldn't dress like a prostitute. That could be like sexually signaling. So what should we do? And one of the things that Paul says is, first he talks about head coverings, but then later he talks about hair. And he says basically, hair is enough, right? That her long hair is enough of a covering. And the whole passage is what's called a literary chiasm. So the first point matches the last point. And so you really do have to finish reading the passage as opposed to get really frustrated with Paul and throw your Bible across the room, right? You finish the thought and you'll get to what he concludes, which is, it's enough to just be recognizable as a woman. Right. How you put your hair or what clothes you wear, that does not matter. It's fascinating. And that reflects kind of the ethic of a shared dominion, right? Given to all humanity, and which Christ then reinstates to all of his followers and invites all to participate in. And it's reflected in the non-elitist way of, handling issues of clothing and wealth and appearance and things like that.
So I'm kind of thinking about last time I talked about like Christian girl TikTok, about girls who are sort of posting their, their Bible study with all of their markers that they have and the things that they write in there, and there's perfect coffee off to the side and how they've read this. It's presenting an image of something that is very pretty and seems sort of crave-worthy for other people who want to have a perfect life like that. Like some of these are, they're even more than like a Christian girl TikTok. It's like, get ready with me. And that's a whole theme of videos. Get ready with me. Here's what I do every morning. And it's sort of like marketing oneself as a product of like, look, the me is the Christian me doing Christian things. And it seems like an idolatry to me. It seems like something that's kind of gross, and it's not crave worthy, it's more cringy to me. How do we think about that?
Well, my first reaction to that is, isn't that exactly what we're talking about? Like there is an idolatry that we inhabit. Like we
Mhm.
we make ourselves as almost as the idol itself. Like
Mhm.
be like this. Here am I. I'm looking really great and I'm doing these Christian things,
Right.
and we market that back out. And
Right.
like I don't know if these people get paid to do these things, or
Maybe. I haven't thought about that, but that'd be gross.
it's somewhat dangerous, because I think Jesus talks
Mm.
about in Matthew 6 not to do things like that, or at least
Right.
when he talks about praying, almsgiving, and fasting,
Yes.
those are things that are important. Like those are important for our spiritual formation. They test and redirect and reshape our desires, but we have to
Right.
do them in the presence of God the Father, as
Mhm.
opposed to in front of everyone else, right?
In a
If you
performative way so that we can get the praise of men.
right, right.
So if Jesus had an iPhone, would he have taken pictures of himself and his morning routine? Would that be okay? Would other people have taken selfies with him? Would that have been okay?
That's such a great question.
Yeah.
Uh,
You don't have to answer. That's just what I saw from that. Like, I mean, I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is that we have art, like images and
that
things
Christian art.
that are produced and created ostensibly for the glory of God, so that we can be close to him and to each other, and to create things that are honoring. I do believe that people who are doing get ready with me Christian Girl morning are attempting to do something like that, but it seems like it sort of misses for me. How do we think about Christian art?
Right, because there is something beautiful that it's trying to do,
Mm,
because we think God is the source of beauty.
mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
why not use that which is beautiful to,
Mm,
in our human opinion,
mm-hmm.
to try to convey that? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think there's an aspect of that. I'll touch on a tradition in the Greek Orthodox Church called iconography that I think is a really helpful illustration of these dynamics. And I want to point out that in the Greek Orthodox tradition, the phrase "rule and subdue" stayed much more and have dominion in Genesis 1 stayed closer to the corporate sense of, like, this is humanity writ large that we're talking about, not like individually you try to go have your dominion pie, right, and even exploit other people to do it. And that is reflected also in the way they think about the physical, like paints, the materials that they try
Mm-hmm.
to use. You may have seen pictures like this one. This is the famous Jesus icon that's called Christ Pantocrator, that was in St. Catherine's Monastery in the Sinai Peninsula. And it's one of the earliest ones. I think it dates back to like the 6th century. And you can see, among other things, that his eyes are very large and like haunting. This is a very Semitic style of art, because at that time Semitic art was actually using very large haunting eyes to depict people. What we now call Greek Orthodox iconography is actually a blending of different cultures, like that, the Semitic style of like painting eyes, but also the Greek realism that comes from sculpture and painting of the classical Greek world. And often it's set in, like Roman buildings that represented governance. So the cathedral actually is patterned after old Roman office government buildings, and it symbolized God's authority. So they were definitely using art and beauty in order to try to convey these things. The gold halo that people are painted with, that reflects their sense of holiness and being in the presence of God. Now that they are departed from this earth or this life,
Mm-hmm.
they are in the presence of God. So gold is always used as a background. It represents the presence of God.
Mm.
If our readers want more information about that, look up Jonathan Pajot and his YouTube channel, which is called The Symbolic World. He's an icon carver who is a French Canadian in the Orthodox tradition, and he does such a good job explaining things like this and a whole bunch of other ways that art and story and things like that go together, because
Mm.
we're trying to capture beauty, or not actually capture it. We're trying to point towards it. Like we're trying to point through the thing to God. And so, icons are only made of saints or people who have a beautiful character in
Mm.
it according to Christ's teaching and definition, right? This is not about looking good
Right.
conventionally, right? This is about being good, being beautiful, and becoming the good and beautiful person that Christ calls us to be.
Right.
And for that reason, all of these things represent how you can perceive Christ and, in reality. The thing, it's the person and the paint itself represents something. It's the
Mm.
work of Christ in the person's life, and also the presence of Christ because he came into our, created reality, the planet Earth, right? And to some degree, there are molecules floating around planet Earth that were probably part of Jesus's body, like
Mhm.
his toenail and hair, fingernail clippings, or his hair, or like loose skin. So his urine,
Mm.
right? The breath he exhaled, like we are participating in a world that Jesus also participated in.
Mhm.
And there's deeper meaning than that. But the idea is that then God allows us to perceive him and encourages us to perceive him in a certain way through these things. And it is like looking at a beautiful sunset,
Mm.
right? I
Mhm.
mean, or, when I was once looking at the Pacific Ocean on a cliff, I just felt drawn towards it. Like there was a part of me
Mhm.
that wanted to actually jump off the cliff and plunge into the beauty. I was like,
Right.
where does
Right.
that desire come from?
Mhm. It almost sounds like, and I truly have no single person in mind as I think about this, because I can't even really think of an example of anybody who does this. But if some of the icon carver and the Eastern Orthodox art is using the art so that we can look through it and remind us of God, there are people who use God to remind us of them.
Oh, good point. Yes.
Yeah.
Ouch.
I mean, I was thinking like, I put on makeup to do this today because I know I'll be in somebody's eyeballs, that someone will see what I look like. And I don't think it was wrong for me to put on makeup, but I don't do that so that you will click on this hoping to catch a glimpse of God and be drawn to me. That's not the point of it. The point of appearance and trying to put your best foot forward is so that you can do good work in the world and so that you can represent Christ, and people will see you and go, that person, yeah, there's something about them. And it's not them. It's something
Exactly.
else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, maybe one day, Lord willing, we will live faithfully with Christ, so that the memory of us helps them
Mm-hmm.
think of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to briefly show two more icons. One is of Saint Moses the Black. He is, I think, an originally Ethiopian man who was a monastic leader in Egypt, and you can find out more about him. Another is Saint Olga of Alaska, and she is actually an indigenous Native American woman who I think lived in the early 20th century. She did a lot of outreach to women who were sexually abused. She
Mm.
is remembered as a saint.
Mm.
And I show these two icons because we are people of color, and there's a tendency to think of icons as, well, that's a European thing.
Mm.
And I understand that. And, truth be told, the majority of icons are probably of European Christians. Although if you, I also want to show briefly this Ethiopian Orthodox icon because there's a rich tradition there.
Mm.
Slightly different style, but very powerful and very engaging. These are ways to remember and Christ and to think about his work in our lives, right? So as we are drawn to him, we are thinking about 2 Peter 1, verse 4, that in Christ we become partakers of the divine nature.
Mm.
And to some degree, the icon is participating in that by the grace of God through our understanding of the person that we are remembering, and because through them we're remembering the person of Christ.
So there's a YouTube channel that I like to watch, and it's this guy. He's a art conservationist, and he'll get these ancient works of art in that have rips and tears and missing parts, and there's areas of paint loss, or you know, the nose is gone entirely or something, and he'll get pieces of art that have been worked on by people before him, and it looks really bad. There was a famous example years ago that of really, really bad conservation work done on a sculpture that was pretty funny. And he talks so much about that the point is not to hide the imperfections that are in the painting. The point is to help the eye see the painting as a whole, to let the imperfections just fade into the background so the whole thing can be visible. And so the true intent of the artist can come through. And I think about that as that's what our point is here, to let the true intentions of the artist come through. We're going to be imperfect, but the great artist, his intentions, his perfection, his work in our life is what's meant to shine through.
Absolutely. Well said.
Thanks. That's all we have time for today, but join us next time for session 11, The Church as Plantation Capitalism's High Priest and False Prophet.